Hello and welcome to the great state of illustration in Maine. I'm Scott Nash, the Executive Director of Illustration Institute. Our mission is to increase appreciation and awareness for the art of illustration, and one of the ways we do that is by creating museum quality exhibitions designed for libraries such as this one, the Falmouth Memorial Library. I'm here to add quips, comments, and perhaps some insights on some of the 93 works in the show. Let's get started, shall we? Chris Van Dusen. Chris Van Dusen is a wonder. His illustrations are both meticulous and vivacious, full of energy and life. Yet his craft is incredible to me. If you take a look at what he's done in this particular image, you'll notice that he's not only is it painted in a very detailed sort of style, but he also adds certain certain features to his drawings to make the works really pop. One of the things I'd like for you to notice on this one is that he's created a little bit of a white glow around the robots in the room to give them to make them stand out and not blend into the background. I've known Chris for many, many years. I had the privilege of working with him. Actually, I had the privilege of hiring him years ago when when my studio was working on work with designing for Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey. And we actually brought him in. He was a fairly somewhat unknown illustrator at the time. And we brought him in and included him in a portfolio of works that we presented to the circus with the idea that we wanted to recreate circus posters. His works, to my delight, his works were selected, and we spent a good year together working on developing circus posters with his illustrations. That experience actually inspired him to dust off an old manuscript that he had created um, way back in college, actually, called The Circus Ship. Jessica Esch. Jessica Esch is a illustrator and designer with endless curiosity about everything having to do with creativity. In her practice, she's done straightforward, sort of illustrations for a variety of products and such. She's also done graphic design work. But something that's fascinated me over the years is her interest in creating what she calls sketch notes. And oftentimes these sketch notes are created to at many of Illustration Institute's programs. What a sketch note is a way of taking down the ideas that are delivered in a say a presentation or a workshop, but then also visualize it so that people get an understanding of it that is both connected to narrative and to pictures in sort of equal measure. I find these fascinating because one of the aspects of illustration that I particularly love is the way that it can help connect visual learners to subjects such as the art of Chris Van Dusen. Stephen Costanza. I hardly know where to begin when talking about the work of my friend Stephen Costanza. Stephen's done a broad range of books over the years on a variety of subjects, from music to science to playing chess. It's been really a wonderful experience watching his progress over the years. Stephen is someone that I call sort of a divergent thinker when it comes to creativity. He's fully immersed in the project, but also is interested in finding new ways to tell a story. In fact, with his works, with his books rather, his illustrations often are a direct result in his intensive research and his commitment to the narrative of the book, so much so that he changes the style that he's working in to suit the book, which is unusual, I would say, and also sort of, in my mind, sort of ethically right. You know, it seems like the right sort of thing to do for for when you're working in illustration, to create something, a style that is very connected to the story. In this case, this is a piece of artwork from his wonderful book, The King of Ragtime, the story of Scott Joplin. He did extensive research into the music of ragtime, how it was developed, Scott Joplin's life, and developed a style that I think really does reflect something of the delight that we have when we hear ragtime music compositions by Scott Joplin. Marcia Sewell. For me, Marcia Sewell's illustration here is a celebration of and an embrace of imperfection in the creation of illustration. Her work is created using a what we would call a reductive sort of form. Probably, I'm guessing that this is lino cut, a hand colored lino cut. And with lino cut, we're cutting away the white from the background in a way that is less than precise, but extremely expressive. Um, I can't get enough of this type of work. It creates a line that is alive and idiosyncratic and just perfect for this subject matter. Megan Kudlak. Now, one step over, I'm going to switch from praising imperfection in line work in Marcia Sewell's work to praising Megan Kudlak's perfection in the work that she creates. This is a digital image, meticulously designed and very thoughtfully designed, I would also add, to create something that is an image that is exceedingly witty and also really, I would also argue, needed to be done in a very clean style. It this idea of the tongue tied frog. Uh, I think that this is the best sort of style I can imagine for this particular idea. Uh, it's smooth and clean and has and adds doesn't take away from the humor at all. And imagine, having been over, we just looked at Marcia Sewell's work. Imagine this subject being done in a style that was rougher and less precise. It would have a very different sort of, we would have a very different reaction to it. Um, I think that this is what's great about Megan's work is that she knows what's funny and knows what works, and I think this works beautifully. Don Peterson. Don Peterson was introduced to me by our intern Imogen Moxe a couple of years ago as being one of her very favorite children's book illustrators. When Imogen presented one of her books to me, Miss Renee's Mice, I was almost immediately taken by the classic style of this artist. It's done with care, with with obvious love. All of these illustrations are done with love, and I was delighted to discover through Imogen that Don Peterson actually lived here in Maine. Uh, and then we had, because she hadn't been published for a number of years, we had some difficulty finding her. but we did track her down. She didn't have a website. She didn't have any sort of social media presence. What we had to do was do things, track her down the old-fashioned way, and just talk to people and ask where Don Peterson might be. Her only presence was on the only way to contact her was through a phone call, and I will never forget hearing her voice on the other end of the phone, and my asking when I asked her, "Are you the Don Peterson who illustrated the wonderful Miss Renee's books?" And she said, "Why, of course I am." And I was able to tell her how much we admired her work and that we wanted to include her work both in this exhibition called named the Great State of Illustration in Maine, but also an exhibition called Mice in the Bookshelves. We were, I think, very privileged to have Dawn in this show and in the previous show. And this is, she has since passed. She passed in 2022, but we are very pleased to include her work and to hopefully give some a reawakening or a new appreciation for the work of this very talented artist. Lucky Platt. Lucky Platt is one of the most innovative, creative artists that I know in the world of children's books. She's also a wonderful writer and educator, but I'm going to focus on her style here. I've looked at a lot of illustration. It is an obsession of mine. I think what we have here is a truly unique style that is that it didn't surprise me when I got to know Lucky. We've become good friends. That she spends a lot of time uh, and has a commitment to drawing in a somewhat experimental fashion. And what's the result is that she's created a book it's one of my favorite children's books called Imagine a Wolf, where she's sort of making us think twice about how wolves and animals are depicted in children's books. She's created a style that is sort of viscerally evocative and enthusiastic, and I, for one, can't get enough of Lucky's work. Tom Booth. Tom Booth is an illustrator who is a master, not of style, but of stylization. He creates human forms and animal forms that are exaggerated, that in someone else's hands might seem like caricature, but in Tom's, it's it's part of the design, and I dare say part of the narrative. The, the exaggerations that you see in this particular illustration is a great example. The shape of the woodsman's chest and back are an extension of his heart. The arms and the head are the same color as the artwork that he's creating with the axe. The fact that the axe is, sort of a rough tool, but also elegant, is it doesn't seem particularly dangerous, but it is a fairly rough tool that also has delicacy to it. Every aspect of Tom's work is is beautifully thought through and designed. One other point that that's another feature that I'd like to point out here is that it's very limited color that he's using. And I think quite intentionally, where the woodsman's clothes are sort of the same color palette as the tree, and the skin of the woodsman and his creation are also of the same color. I think this is a stunning work done not only by an expert in character design, but an expert in how design and how the shape of characters can help shape our thoughts about a story. Charlotte Miguel, you will learn from this audio that I embrace a wide range of styles and admire a wide range of artistic expression. Charlotte Miguel is an artist who I have always admired for the direct nature of everything she does, every piece of artwork she creates. The line appears, the ink line appears to be created with no sketching underneath. It's just very direct. Um, and the application of color in her work is not fussy. It's emotional, and I think much of the success of her books for me is that very emotional sort of quality of her drawings that um, adults treasure and children really do relate to. In that there is a playfulness and an active quality to all of the work that she does. Ashley Bryan. I'm sometimes not a fan of illustrations that are created in cut paper. In the hands of the wrong artists, scissors create a cookie cutter or perfect look that comes, I think, with the process of cutting, basically. In the hands of Ashley Bryan, scissors created expressive, beautiful, idiosyncratic characters and stories that feel fresh as can be, spontaneous as can be. And that is one of many uh, aspects of Beautiful Blackbird that I dearly love. I urge you to pour over this piece of work, this spread from Beautiful Blackbird, and just look at the variety of characters, how they there's a range of sort of expression, sizes, shapes, and also I want you to notice that the crafting, the cutting of the work is not particularly fussy or precise. I think that this is a quality that makes Beautiful Blackbird an enduring storybook that has vitality and life to it. Scott Nash. Well, folks, this one is by me. It's actually from my very first book, Saturday Night at the Dinosaur Stomp. And I chose it for this exhibition because it demonstrates another way of working in watercolor and pencil. I was particularly interested in this time with the energy of sketches, of small sketches that I would do. And I found myself sort of being very fond of what are called thumbnails, the small size drawings that eventually become the finished illustrations. And I always found myself sort of frustrated with sort of the lack of energy that was eventually conveyed in the final drawings. So back in these days, I would actually sort of buck what is considered convention in illustration, which is generally illustrators will work larger than the actual published work. I was going through a phase, and that I still continue to do to this day from time to time, where I will work either at size or even smaller than the size of the final printed book. And in this case, I think it worked pretty well. I was able to maintain, as I said, the energy of a sketch and bring it to the final work. This book has proven to be very popular. It's endured for many, many years, and it's never been out of print. Marty Braun. Marty Braun is a well recognized, if not well known, illustrator who has been working in Maine for more than 30 years. And I'm delighted to say that he works in airbrush. This is not digital, folks. This is the old fashioned spray on paper technique of creating imagery. And it's created by using a variety of masks or friskets to block off certain areas, and then color is applied by a compressor and a sprayer, basically. Um, Marty has developed what I think is an exceedingly distinctive style that it's not super fine spray, it's actually a very controlled and interesting pattern. And it's something that once you see it, you'll never miss it. Marianne Lloyd. Marianne Lloyd is probably one of the most recognized illustrators in Maine. Her iconic work for Hannaford's and for Rosemont Market is very well known. This is a poster that she created for Weiler's promoting the importance of pollinators. I want to point out here that Marianne Lloyd's background is that she studied graphic design, and you can see that that is coming to the fore here with this particular composition, where she created not only the images but the typography as well. Holly Mead. Holly Mead is an artist that has a immortal presence in many of our lives. She was one of the great illustrators of Maine. She was also a printmaker and painter. She was an all around artist, and created many children's books, beautifully illustrated children's books. I'm very proud to have this her her submission for the Common Ground Fair, or her poster for the Common Ground Fair, in this collection. It really displays the vitality of her work and the vitality one can achieve with cut lines in either a lino block or a wood block print. Dan Blakesley. Dan Blakesley can seem like a nomadic, enigmatic figure that seems to show up everywhere. He's both a musician and a very talented illustrator who shares his work all around the world, but mostly in New England. He's done many album covers, and he generously creates posters in whatever community he lives in that he will actually just post around the neighborhood. They are not necessarily for sale. They're just out there to sort of to bring enjoyment, bring joy to the world, basically. This is a poster that he created in his idiosyncratic and irresistible style for the Newport Festival. Once you've seen his work, you will recognize it and see it as a gift whenever you come across it. Melissa Sweet. Where do I begin with Melissa Sweet? She's a Caldecott winning children's book author and illustrator. She takes on projects and subjects like William Carlos Williams, E. Cummings, um, and she is not only one of the more inventive illustrators that I know. I really think you could call her an inventor. She invents children's books. The research that goes into her work is extraordinary. When you walk into her studio, if you ever have the privilege of walking into her studio, it feels almost somewhere between an art studio and a lab. And it's through this process of sort of deep research and a deep commitment to the story that she's trying to convey that she creates a myriad of, of illustrations created in different styles. This particular piece in the show was created for her book about the creation of Roget's Thesaurus. Rockwell Kent. Rockwell Kent's illustrated edition of Moby Dick is a masterpiece. In my view, one of the greatest illustrated books of all time. This single illustration before you, shown out of context of the book, is akin to seeing a photo of a scene in a grand opera but not experiencing the performance. The single image here can be viewed as art, but is also an artifact of a greater work of art, which is the book. I would strongly urge you to get your hands on the Random House edition of Moby Dick, illustrated by Rockwell Kent. It may forever change the way you look at books. Patrick Corrigan. Patrick Corrigan is a musician, muralist, cartoonist, and graphic novelist. In his graphic short stories, such as this for the Portland Phoenix, Pat makes that which we choose not to see visible and helps us better understand the subcultures often ignored in our society. Winslow Homer. Maine is known for a wealth of great artists. Dahlov Ipcar, Edward Hopper, Ashley Bryan, N.C. Wyeth, and Winslow Homer, to name a very few. However, not enough people realize that all of the illustrators I just listed were illustrators. This illustration is one of many Homer created for Harper's Weekly and other popular magazines of the time. Doug Smith has been illustrating in a medium called Scratchboard for more than 40 years. Scratchboard is a subtractive art where illustrators scratch with sharp tools through a top layer on that's created on specialized board. It's a black layer actually, to reveal a white clay surface underneath, creating images sort of in reverse, adding light to make the picture appear. Doug has illustrated all of the popular Wicked novels by Gregory Maguire. This lion is from the third of five novels and is titled A Lion Among Men. Francis Hamabe. Francis Hamabe was a teacher, puppeteer, painter, graphic designer, and illustrator who had a great influence on the arts culture in Maine. He was the first art director of Down East magazine. His style might be described as playful humanitarian modernism. Isabella Rotman. Isabella Rotman is a cartoonist and illustrator and a professor at Maine College of Art and Design. She's also the artist whose work graces all of the graphics connected to the great state of illustration in Maine. The artwork that you're standing in front of is from her wonderful book, Like the Tide, which is a meditation, well, a meditation on swimming. Nancy Gibson Nash. Nancy Gibson Nash is the co founder of Illustration Institute and a well known collage illustrator whose work has been published in the Atlantic Monthly, East West Journal, Smithsonian, and many other magazines. As a contributor to The Atlantic, this illustration was created for their last word feature about etymology of interesting words, in this case, the origins of baseball slang. Terms like groove heat, junk ball, hot corner, can of corn. For Nancy, collage is a poetic form. Much in the way poets collect words, Nancy collects images and objects, then assembles and composes these ingredients to deliver an evocative illustration to illuminate the narrative of the article. William Roth. Will Roth is a graphic novelist working on Peaks Island and Illustration Institute's assistant curator. Will is both an artist and scholar of graphic novels with a keen interest in how stories are conveyed in words, pictures, design, sequence, and framing. His style has developed from a loving and critical connection to this vital genre. His character designs are thoughtful and distinct, carefully creating personalities through his designs. This panel is from a novel he's developing with the working title of Rookery Blues. Thanks for visiting the great state of illustration in Maine. In conjunction with the exhibition, we are offering a robust array of presentations and workshops through the end of January. For more information about these programs, go to Falmouth Memorial Library and click on What's Happening. For more information about Illustration Institute's programs, exhibitions, and artist residency, go to illustrationinstitute.org. I'd like to thank everyone at the Falmouth Memorial Library for supporting and hosting this exhibition, and I'd like to encourage you to thank them as well. After all, you have an exceptional library here in Falmouth.